In earlier episodes, I have presented 10 chapters from my book titled Great Saints of India. This is the 11th chapter of the book dealing with Sri Aurobindo. Chapter 11 Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo, earlier known as Aurobindo Ghosh, was born on 15th August 1872 at Kolkata. He has been considered one of the foremost philosophers of the 20th century, but he was far more than just a philosopher. He was a political activist, a mystic, a spiritual leader, a poet, a yogi, and a teacher. Sri Aurobindo was sent to England at a very young age to be educated at prestigious institutions there. In 1890, he got through the Indian Civil Service, but at the end of 2 years of probation, he failed to present himself at the riding examination. He deliberately failed as he did not want to work for the British Empire. He was therefore disqualified for the service. Thereafter, in 1893, he came to India and joined the service under the Gaikwad of Baroda. He spent 13 years from 1893 to 1906 in the Baroda service. At Baroda, he learned Sanskrit and several modern Indian languages, assimilated the spirit of Indian civilization and its forms, past and present. The outbreak of the agitation against the partition of Bengal in 1905 gave him the opportunity to give up the Baroda service and join openly in the political movement. He left Baroda in 1906 and went to the then Kolkata as principal of the newly founded Bengal National College. He joined the political movement against the British rule and was imprisoned. In 1908, he was implicated in the Alipo bomb plot in which 2 people died. In prison, he underwent a profound and life changing spiritual experience. He began to meditate very deeply and inwardly received spiritual instruction from religious leaders and the Hindu gods. During this spiritual transformation, he received an inner command to give up politics and devote his life to spirituality and the descent of a new spiritual consciousness. Thereafter, he decided to move to the French province of Pondicherry, presently known as Puducherry, where he began to practice meditation and spiritual disciplines. He lived at first with 4 or 5 disciples in a house. Afterwards, more and more people began to come to him to follow his spiritual path. A couple of years later, a French mystic by the name of Mira Richards came to visit Pondicherry. Sri Aurobindo saw in her a kindred spirit, and she also joined Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo considered her to be of equal yogic stature and started calling her as the mother. She was known to all inmates as the mother from then on. During his stay at Pondicherry from 1910 onward, Sri Aurobindo remained more and more exclusively devoted to his spiritual work and yoga. In 1914, he began the publication of a philosophical monthly, namely the Arya. Most of his important works, namely the Life Divine, the Synthesis of Yoga, essays on the Gita, and the Isha Upanishad, appeared serially in the Arya. These works embodied much of the inner knowledge that had come to him in his practice of yoga. The Arya ceased publication in 1921. Around 1924 onwards, the mother started to organize the functioning of the inmates, and slowly the house was turning into an ashram with many followers flowing in every day. Soon the number became so large that a community had to be formed for the maintenance and collective guidance of those who had left everything behind for the sake of a higher life. This was the foundation of the Sri Aurobindo Ashram. After 1926, Sri Aurobindo started to retire from regular activities towards yogic practices, and number of inmates had grown to 85 members. Sri Aurobindo declared the mother to be sole in charge of further activities of the ashram. Sri Aurobindo's philosophy is in a sense practical. It is based on facts, experience, and personal realizations, and on having the vision of a seer. Aurobindo's spirituality is inseparably united with reason. The goal aimed at by Sri Aurobindo is not merely the liberation of the individual from the chain that fetters him, but to work out the will of the divine in the world, to effect a spiritual transformation, and to bring down the divine nature and a divine life into the mental, vital, and physical nature and life of humanity. His teaching states that behind the appearances of the universe there is the reality of a being and consciousness, a self of all things, one and eternal. It is something like what Adi Shankara and others called as Brahman. Sri Aurobindo says that this one being and consciousness is involved here in matter. Evolution is the method by which it liberates itself and consciousness appears in what seems to be inconscient. Once having appeared, it is self-impelled to grow higher and higher, and at the same time to enlarge and develop towards a greater and greater perfection. Life is the first step of this release of consciousness, and mind is the second. But the evolution does not finish with the mind. It awaits a release into something greater, a consciousness which is spiritual and supramental. Thereafter, there is the development of supermind and spirit as the dominant power in the conscious being. A conversion has to be made a turning of the consciousness by which mind has to change into the higher principle. This method is to be found through the ancient psychological discipline and practice of yoga. This, however, cannot be done at once or in a short time or by any rapid or miraculous transformation. Many steps have to be taken by the seeker before the supramental descent is possible. To realize this possibility had been the dynamic aim of Sri Aurobindo's yoga. Sri Aurobindo left his body on 5th December 1950, and the mother carried on his work till her death in November 1973. I have also published an audiobook on the subject. The links for the book titled Great Science of India and the audiobook are given in the description part of this presentation.